3, 2, 1.
This is The Jungle, an up-close, unvarnished look inside leadership and business strategy. We wade into the real-world leaders' face and explore what they do to create a path forward, because that's what business is. Wild, exciting.
It's The Jungle.
Derrick, we're back in the jungle. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm gonna do my coffee.
Coffee. I'm gonna go with water. It's the new year.
It is the new year.
What are you looking forward to this year? What's 2022 going to be like? Do you think?
2022 is going to be the most exciting year yet, and we've had some exciting years, but this year, you said it. This year's execution. 2022 should be about execution. Hopefully, getting through this first early Omicron spread, getting over that hump quickly, and then total execution.
It's going to be I think it's going to be a big year. It's going to be an exciting year. We've done a lot. We have a lot still to do this year. And one of those big items is our acquisition course and our pathway, entrepreneurship through acquisition. So listeners might be wondering where are all of our guests, and it's just you and I today.
No guests.
No guests. We are the guests. And this is really in response to questions, right? From listeners, from professors, from the community, from MBAs. They're all really interested,
business
excited.
Owners,
yep.
Small business associations, everybody.
What is this acquire concept? What is this class? Why does it exist? Who does it serve? And so we thought we got to do a podcast just on acquire.
Just to explain it and promote the opportunity and talk about what we do day in and day out.
Yep.
You and I.
Yep.
Where I spend most of my time.
Yes.
Oh no. Well, I have most of my time.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is I think get listeners up to speed on what the spaces that this acquire course plays in, what kind of sector of the economy. We'll go over maybe some surprises about what's happening there, and maybe dispel some myths in the process about how professionals can actually be a solution and engage in this sector of small businesses, which we'll be talking about. And then we'll dive into a little bit about what the Acquire course is, what it entails, who it serves, and hopefully, at the end of the day, is get people excited about this, that they can actually, punchline, go out and buy a business.
Yeah, we should write stuff on dispelling the myths and just put it all over the place. But yeah, absolutely.
So
how do we help someone buy businesses? That's what we do.
So we're really prepared on this topic because we
live it.
We live it every single day. I think probably what people first want to know is, where does Acquire fit in? Are we talking about big companies, little companies, acquiring what? I guess is the question.
Yeah. So back up. We run a big center at Western. The center has a very innovative undergraduate programs. The second part that most people don't know about is the innovative professional program that we offer to both MBAs and professionals in the community, and that's acquisition. An acquisition course. It's called Acquire, and that course teaches professionals how to buy small businesses. And small businesses has a very broad definition. Generally, there's two paths there, right? But generally we talk about lower middle market businesses. So businesses that are doing between $1 and $30 million of revenue are generally considered small businesses.
Now,
backbone of the economy.
Now, small businesses, do you see a lot of education and career paths to small businesses? You hear your conversation about small businesses, but what kind of educational programming do you see? How does small business fit into that in terms of what higher education currently offers?
This is one of the biggest controversies that we noticed, right? When we started all of this is everything in higher education is geared to one of two audiences, right? One audience is corporate America. Every business case, everything we look at is big, large corporations. Nothing wrong with working in big, large corporations, but that's where all the training in your typical higher ed is. The other part that higher ed has tried to tackle is startups. how to start your own company, how to do, lean startup or, venture capital, that whole section. Well, between startup, high-tech growth startup, and Fortune 500 big corporations is the majority of the businesses that, by and large, most educational institutions completely ignore, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Right? That's where the N is much bigger too, because as you go up in size, the number of businesses goes down. A majority of people actually work for small businesses. And there's a lot more small businesses. They tend to be, people talk about the backbone of the economy. By numbers, they actually are. But there's very little training in most higher ed institutions for small business. It's business, and your business is startup or it's corporate. There's no focus in that.
So what does that look like? I mean, if you're training someone in a business school for entrepreneurship, starting businesses, that has a certain set of things you need to do to be successful. And then we've got other training that looks at big companies or cases that engage that. What's different about that overlooked middle in terms of small businesses and what you need to do to be successful in small business that we're missing?
Well, I think if you look at startups, it's like you're by yourself and you're with someone else and you're raising capital and you're putting your business plan together and you're doing pitches. If you're at the other end, it's you are very functionally and narrowly defined as you're going to go work for X and you're going to be an analyst in X department. So you're going to be the digital marketing specialist in the sales department for X company, or you'll be the IT specialist in this part, in this function, in this product line even. You can get really narrowly niche depending on the size of the company. Small business, there's this space in the middle where you kind of have to wear multiple hats sometimes, and the roles aren't as defined. And usually the small business is still doing something specific, but there's lots going on behind the scenes. It tends to be not as clean because they don't have the resources, right? There's no easy button. I call it the corporate easy button, right? Oh, this has to get done. Well, that goes to this department, to this person. I joked about one person taking our Acquire class. How do I buy one of these things? Well, you contact this person, and I contact that person. They put me to another person, and they put me to another person, and then I had to go visit a third person. I was like, no small business has that many people to contact to buy one of your products. So it's very different.
So it's the multiple hats which we experience some, right? You're working on marketing, you're working on sourcing, you're training, you're operating, you're executing, you're fundraising, you're serving students, mentoring students, and
I think the other big difference is the impact, right? You are one step away from the CEO at all times. So either in a small business you're the CEO, or you are one, maybe two steps the most away from that CEO, and you can see your direct impact on that bottom line with everything you do.
More accountability.
More accountability.
More responsibility.
More responsibility, right? And so, the sales force is not 300 people, it's 3 people, maybe if you're lucky. The IT department is outsourced until you get to a certain point, maybe 100 employees, and then you start bringing it in-house. So there's a lot more partnerships. The accounting and bookkeeping is one person, and then you rely on key partnerships with accounting firms. So there's a lot of differences in small business that people forget. But again, the sheer number of these small businesses is staggering.
So you have the overlooked middle, and it's overlooked in terms of training, probably overlooked maybe in terms of career paths, preparing people to be successful with these skills of wearing multiple hats or navigating partnerships or being nimble, right? There's a certain skill set to be really effective. What else is going on with small businesses that people might overlook in terms of what's changing and what's going to change in the future?
So, while there's a couple things, right? All small businesses need to, it doesn't mean because they're short-staffed, they get to forget about staying up with trends, right? So the first one is the big shifts in digital presence, digital marketing, technology. They still have to adopt all these technologies. The other massive shifts is what we're talking about, which I think was your point of your question was, one, there's a massive transition of small business ownership. And that transition is, if you look at it, by and large, most of the small businesses, 75% are owned by baby boomers. Of those 75% of small businesses, and maybe 15% have a succession plan. So something has to happen with those small businesses. Either they close or they sell.
So what kind of size are we talking about? I mean, we've seen some stats that this is in the $3 to $4 trillion, right, of wealth, right, of business ownership that will now come up for sale with, or be at that point of they're thinking about selling with no succession plan.
Yeah, so those are the numbers. So there's data, and I don't want to throw data around too lightly, but there's certain data points that say there's 500,000 small businesses that need to sell every single year right now, or that there's $3 trillion worth of wealth over the next 10 years that has to change hands from current ownership of small business to some new ownership structure. That causes a threat to those current owners for a succession plan, the economies that those companies are in, every service provider that provides some service to those small businesses, whether it's the bankers, the small business associations, the insurance providers, anybody that's the accountants, anybody that's touching those small businesses is now in a threat with those small businesses not staying open.
We've seen, to your point, you don't get perfect numbers on this, but you look at
it's big.
It's research out of Stanford. It's other professors looking at this. There's a lot of these small businesses that have this challenge, who have baby boomers as CEOs, who need to figure out their next step, and it's a lot of economic value that those businesses account for. So it's big in terms of number. It's big in terms of dollars.
Well, so for some rough numbers, right? If some of the Small Business Association Michigan have more than 25,000 small business owner members. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And if you think, some of the data says only 18% of those small businesses have a succession plan. So the other 20,000 don't have a succession plan and likely are owned by baby boomers who need to retire soon and are looking for a succession plan. 15% of those will go to family. The other... So now you're down to 18,000 small businesses that what's going to happen to them?
So is this a challenge? Like what could be the potential negative of, I mean, it seems like a lot, but maybe this will all be fine. Like what's the potential challenges with this?
So there's two challenges. One, it's keeping all these jobs, employees, businesses open. Some of them are great businesses. It's just the owners ready to retire. They're really good businesses. Some of them will close because they've run their business model and it's in a legacy business and it's time for that business to close. Others, which is what we're starting to see, will sell to private equity. Unless you're in an MBA program or a graduate program at one of the top schools, a lot of the schools don't teach undergraduate students about private equity. Private equity is starting to own or take greater ownership of a large portion of private companies in the United States. The problem there is if a private equity firm, like we're private equity, buys a company, right? They stop using all the local resources. They stop sponsoring the local festivals and soccer teams and baseball teams and clubs and nonprofits. All of that money tends to go back to where that private equity headquarters is. Sometimes the CEO stops living in the town, and sometimes it gets rolled up into other companies, which is all fine from a business model standpoint. But if you're one of these service providers or bankers or insurance providers that was serving that company, that's lost business to you too. So it really is a little bit of a threat to a lot of small towns like Kalamazoo or West Michigan or even Michigan as a state as a whole.
So the private equity firm, its business is buying companies, trying to grow those companies, and then ultimately sell those companies. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes those firms are on the coasts.
Yep.
Right.
Coasts are in Chicago.
In Chicago,
So, and they're starting to get a little more spread out, but.
And so they go and they make an acquisition in Great Kalamazoo here, Grand Rapids, Muskegon. And when that occurs, if it's from maybe on a coast, the person who is working on, the banker who's working on that deal, the accountant who actually maybe works for that business right now and is a service provider to that business, the outsourced IT, local provider, the lawyer that's been done in town, that gets maybe centralized out to one of the coasts where they're then managing that part of the business. And so if you care about the success of the ecosystems of businesses in these communities, private equity presents a challenge.
So here's the big challenge, right? Small businesses are the backbone of most economies. Small business ownership is the key to that. The ownership of the small business and the capital and the resources that owner provides to a community is actually the key. The jobs can stay here, right? And that's the second part. But the real important part is that the capital is local. Those small business owners that are local tend to be larger sponsors, philanthropy, service provider users in the local community. And that small business ownership is not here. The capital and the ownership of the small business is not here. That's starting to create a long-term trend challenge that will change the underlying economy of every state and city.
So I think especially here in Kalamazoo, people really care about, West Michigan, right? Kalamazoo, people care about this area, right, as a community, and so this is a challenge in terms of all these dynamics.
Also an opportunity.
Also, what's the solution to this? How could someone engage in this and they want to be the person who actually maybe keeps that business open, who puts their name, on the Little League outfield and all of that. What's the opportunity there?
So there's two solutions. One, if you're a small business owner and looking to retire, you need to find some way to sell local. If you want to keep that ownership local, the capital local, the baseball fields, the sponsorship local. That's one, right? The second solution to that problem or opportunity is someone has to be willing to buy it and have the capital to buy it, that company, depending on size. So the solution is the next generation of small business leaders is what we're in a choir trying to identify and help train in place. The next generation of small business owners that sponsor all of those programs, use all those service providers local, keep the capital local is the solution. And that's what Acquire does, and that's what we do day in and day out. You can buy a business if you're a working professional, eager and willing to learn.
So we have a little social media post, right, to advertise and build awareness that this is
that we're here.
Because there are you're told again 2 paths in life, right, about how you can be successful. What are those 2 paths, and how is this an overlooked third path?
So 2 paths. Yeah, well, you can answer that, but 2 paths. One path is start a company, right? And that's all glorified by the Zuckerbergs and Gates, but people forget that for every Zuckerberg and Gates, there's thousands of small startups that actually fail. A lot of small, that's the highest risk path, probably. Big risk there. Yep. Most of them fail. Even venture capital small businesses that have raised more funding than needed still have a high rate of failure.
So you can be a CEO though.
You can be a CEO.
You try to start your own business.
Start your own business. If you're that entrepreneurial kind of mindset, you can do that. The other path that's taught is climbing the corporate ladder, right? Getting in a corporation, getting good at some. Usually you start going on rotations if you're really talented around the business, and then you start to move up to director, vice president, president, CEO, executive team. What we say is the third path. This third path is acquisition, entrepreneurship through acquisition. You can actually buy a small business. As a young or mid-career professional, there are tools and resources around and methodologies you can follow to help you successfully buy a great small business and have a fantastic life as the owner-operator of that business.
There's not a lot of conversation, to be sure, about entrepreneurship through acquisition that you could actually you could become a CEO, be a part of the solution, keep capital local, run these small businesses, by buying a business. And I think there's two myths there, right? That I think people see, right? Or that makes this path hidden, right? Myth number one is people say to themselves, I can't buy a business. I'm not wealthy. I don't have a bunch of capital that I could actually use to go. I'm not Bill Gates. I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. Look at these big companies with all this money buying these businesses. Can you buy a business and not be independently wealthy and do that?
So yes, you actually can, Doug. The good news in today's world is the resources and tools are there. Like I said, we have a training program that anybody, even if you have zero capital put in, we can show you how to actually acquire a small business.
How do you do that? If you're not someone with millions of dollars, because that's what people will say. Derrick sounds great, being a CEO, but I don't have the financing to do that.
So let's talk. I'll break it down to two paths and this can be broken down more and more with each path. But let's talk about two general paths: the super small business, your local coffee shop, restaurant, all those kind of smaller, maybe doing 100,000 people call them lifestyle or Main Street businesses, or two names for those. Those businesses can be transferred with SBA. The government has a really great lending program. All the local banks can help you through that. The SBDC has programs to help you through that. You can come take the Acquire program. We'll show you the steps to get 65% of the way of the things that you're going to need to do. And then we can have conversations and help you get over the line. But that's really an individual process that investors wouldn't be involved in. And maybe it's family, friends you get money from to help you out with that initial capital. The capital need for that upfront is really small.
So I can buy a business with a loan from a bank, a loan from the government, friends and family, and I can get over the line to buy a smaller business.
Or even the previous owner may give you the rest of the loan themselves, and then a seller note, right?
Okay.
Say you get a bank loan, and the owner will say, keep me in the earnings for the next 5 years, and you own my business. And
Okay.
Nothing down.
Okay.
So family, all big businesses started small at once, right? So we're talking about you can keep your small business. It's hard to scale a coffee shop unless you're Starbucks and you scale it through franchises, which is possible. But there's a lot of small businesses that are for sale that are in a niche. They're fragmented. They do something you've never heard of. Small manufacturers in Michigan, small agriculture companies in Michigan, and a young working professional could buy one of those with the hope to build and scale them. Now, some of those companies are earning $1 to $3 million in EBITDA, so that's a bigger transaction. And what would generally happen there is you would buy that with investors. The investors would give you some sort of equity or take an equity stake in that business with you, and you can earn ownership with various compensation incentives, and up to 30% in most cases. And you can also invest your own money and take more ownership if needed. So this is another path that a lot of people use, and it's become very popular for a mid-career or someone that wants to finally be their own CEO to partner with investors and buy a business. And so the bank's in, the investors are in, sometimes the seller's in, and you put that deal together and you buy a business. And this is what the Acquire program mainly focuses on. You're a working professional, you want to buy a decent sized business and you want to grow that business. You're hungry, you want to look at growth, you want to look at expansion. And that's what our general focus on. There's actually a whole term called search funds around this.
And that's where you can so that myth is wrong, right? You don't need to be independently wealthy.
You don't need to be wealthy. All of this can be learned, and you just need to be hungry and willing to learn it all.
So that's another myth, right? That this is this opaque process. You hear about businesses that come up for sale and all of a sudden they're sold and nobody knew about it and it's all hidden and you're not sure what's going on. But
that part is true.
That part is true.
That part is true.
But this is not a secret process that no one knows. This is learnable.
This is
how to buy a business.
So there's two things that are learnable, right? One, how to buy a business. So getting to that whole process, every one of those steps is learnable. The second part of that process is how to be a CEO and successfully run that business.
Yep.
Right? We try to focus on both and identify both and train both, but and I guess a myth in there, and that first-time CEOs are not as successful as CEOs that are on their second or third run. Actually, some of that's opposite. First-time CEOs sometimes are your most successful. So there's that myth, right? And you have to be. Both of those are learnable in some aspects. Some would say that entrepreneurs are born, and some just have that entrepreneurial itch, and they just haven't scratched it yet. So this is one way for them to finally take that leap. Some people will regret when they're older that they never took that leap. This is a chance for them to take their leap. And so the myth is, the wealth myth is absolutely false. You do not have to be wealthy to put this together. You just have to be hardworking and have the ability to understand deal structures, which we teach, and how to put that deal together.
So let's talk about the Acquire course. So it's a learnable process where you can become a CEO. Gosh knows there's a ton of these businesses coming up for sale. You can be a CEO in that process. You can make great wealth in that process by running that business, right? Mm-hmm. You can impact your community. You can grow jobs. This is a path. We talk about a path of purpose and profit, right? There's wealth, purpose and prosperity.
Yeah. So it is. You can be very, very, very successful taking this path. The whole Acquire program is set up to train you how to look for, find, evaluate, negotiate, and buy a small business.
All those phases the Acquire course covers.
Yep.
So we're talking about, am I right for this path?
Yep.
We go over that. We go over how you find these businesses.
Yep. How do
sourcing,
you source them?
right?
Because that is one of the challenges. Is when small businesses sell, they want to keep everything very quiet, right? And so there's a very high level of trust, of confidentiality that is needed through the entire process from all parties, and so that's a bit of the challenging process is actually sourcing and finding the right one for you.
What's after sourcing? You get the right company. We teach you how to.
Well, to make an offer is a little bit complicated. You start to get in legal documents. So how to actually make an offer and negotiate that first offer, and then how to post that offer and acceptance of the first offer. There's a whole lot of due diligence. So you think of buying a house, you do the inspection, right? Well, buying a business, it's called due diligence. You do a ton before you make your first offer, and then you do a lot more after you make that offer before you actually close the deal, which is usually through a purchase agreement. Stock asset, we don't get in those details, but to get from my offer accepted to close is quite a detailed process.
So we're going over, which is great because you get to know how is this path for me? How do I find them? Once I find them, are they worth buying or not? If they are worth buying, how much are they worth? How do I put that process together, and then how I further analyze and then ultimately close the transaction with an eye towards how I ultimately grow it and make it successful.
Correct. So I think very high level. Am I an entrepreneur? Do I want to be a CEO? Yes, no. Yes. Do I want to do a startup with all of the risks? Is that the path for me? Or is acquisition a path for me? Step 2. Step 3, if it's acquisition, do I want partners and buy something big and grow, or do I want to do it myself? That will depend on the resources that I personally bring to the table. The capital that I have to my name that will help me buy that business. Now, there's benefits and drawbacks, right? The investors, you get strong partners, you get board members, usually they're helpful, but they're a partner.
Step after that.
Right? The small one is you're by yourself, you're signing a personal guarantee, you're signing your house away usually, you're signing something with the bank, and on top of that, it's a smaller business and you are wearing every single hat. The bigger business comes with teams, opportunities for growth. The smaller business is you and all of the risk, but both are fine.
And then after that step, then it's I almost feel like we need to add the big decision tree that you're laying out, right? Because it's after you know that path, then it's like, how do I find them? Mm-hmm. Once you find one, then it's like, do I buy it? Do I not? If yes, how much do I need to put down? Is it in terms of what is it worth, right? After that, then it's the negotiation, and then it's with an eye towards that I can grow this business. Mm-hmm. Is it grow? Can I grow it? Yes, no, how? And then hopefully you get over the finish line, right?
Yep.
So in this Acquire course, who's this designed? Who should take this class?
So the Acquire course, in all reality, it's designed for your mid-career professional. When I say mid-career,
If I'm 21, am I taking Acquire?
yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
If I'm an MBA, do I take Acquire?
If you're an MBA, you can take Acquire. Generally, we like people to have a little bit of working experience. That gives them a better look at reality, and maybe they've tasted corporate world and they've said, I've always been an entrepreneur, this corporate world is not for me, right? But you've learned a lot of skills that will help you in running a small business. And so that's generally the path that we find successful in acquiring a small business is you've got some experience, you come and you take the Acquire program, you realize corporate acquisition or corporate growth is not for you, the corporate life, and you want to do the small business and you want to be the CEO, and you could be in late 20s to, 60, right? You see 60-year-olds buying businesses, and you can be anywhere in there, and that's who this Acquire course is for.
And then how about, let's get super tactical. So the Acquire course, anyone who wants to be a CEO and buy a business, this is something they should check out, right? It's one class. It's very, I think from a cost perspective, it's nothing like paying for an entire MBA or paying for an entire other certificate. Where it's a great value. So, little details on the Acquire course, like how long is this? Do I have to show up online? Is it in person?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Wow,
I don't have any finance skills, but I have these skills. How do we go through this?
So a couple
class?
things. The books written on this actually oversimplify it and make it sound really easy, which is not the case. The Acquire course registration is open right now. You can actually begin to get access to all of our resources and weekly one-on-one coaching right now.
So just to jump in, so the Acquire course starts the next cohort. We had a sold out Acquire course in fall.
Yeah.
We're offering a spring Acquire course. Registration by February 10th.
Registration by February 10th, but the earlier you register, the earlier you get access to all the resources.
And the class starts February.
The live sessions start February 28th.
Okay, but you can register and start learning and getting going now.
You can register and start learning right now. You can start one-on-one weekly coaching sessions right now, and those are generally with me. And then the actual cohort section of the Acquire course is 8 weeks in total. So what we ask you to do is, it's a lot of work, but what we ask you to do is register for the Acquire course, go through all the resources, read the books before you start, then have some one-on-one coaching with me, then start essentially where we have 8 challenges, an 8-week live sessions where we come together and do challenges.
So you got a personal coaching, which we need to wrap up here because I know you got one of those. But
I have one of those.
Right, there are already people signing up, which is really good. And so it's open to the community. It's open nationally. Really, anyone who wants to take this class and go through it on how to buy a business.
Yep.
You're already having some great folks sign up. So that's great because it's accessible for anybody. This one-on-one coaching is virtual. The class is virtual. Maybe we'll have some in-person components if it makes sense.
Depending on Omicron and
all of that.
Yep. With that. But.
Yep. And then so that's really exciting that's launching now. So if somebody listens to this and they think this might be interesting for me, what do they do to learn more?
Yeah, so the very simple way to put WMU Acquire in Google, they'll take you right to our webpage. You hit an application form, that application form gets submitted, we look it over, and we try to minimize the size of our cohorts. You can only do one-on-one coaching with so many people, so we either accept or deny you for this cohort based on the answers that you put in that form. Very simple form to fill out. You'll get an email from us on how to register. You'll get login details and system emails once you register, and then you're in the course and you've got access to everything.
And if they wanted to email you?
They can email me directly at, put my name in Google and hit Western and email me, or Derrick, 2 R's, I-C-K, so D-E-R-R-I-C-K, period, M-C-I-V-E-R at wmish.edu.
And so everybody who needs to make sure they know this, it's not Derrick McIver. It's Derrick McIver.
McIver, yes.
McIver, right? Excellent.
Capital I. But
All
you
right.
really have to that's not important for the email.
We need to bounce because you have to get to one of these one-on-one coaching sessions. Hopefully that was a great overview. Right?
What we do, Doug.
We almost need to put this at the beginning of the class, right? Or as a promo out for people to kind of, because there's the small businesses overlooked piece. There's the fact that nobody really realizes all these businesses are coming up for sale. That people think they can't actually participate in that and buy a business. They think startups. They think big companies. It's learnable. There's a path, and then we didn't get a chance to get to it, but Sleeping Giant Capital, which is the affiliated investment fund. You go through Acquire, you get the opportunity to apply to be backed by those investment dollars if that's a path that you want to take. Not necessary, but that opens that up.
That's where you pick that individual path where I'm going to do this by myself, or I'm going to buy something bigger and I need investment help, and that investment help is here and it's ready for you. And the resources are ready for you here at Sleeping Giant Capital, and we actually identify and back individuals through an application process once they've taken the Acquire program.
Shout out to all the LBS media team for their first run at running the entire podcast. Hopefully all the listeners will be excited about some new developments we have with the podcast coming up, some more student involvement, some more student operations. So look forward to a good year.
Good year. Cheers, Doug.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Cheers.